So today we're going to be using Thermo's kit for the BCA assay, and we're going to be performing that assay on a microplate. Therefore, we're going to follow their recommendations on the best practices on how to perform their assay. If you're using a different kit, which is perfectly fine, just make sure to double check the recommendations and make sure you follow those best practices. Now, whenever you're running a protein assay, it all starts with your sample. So try to have high quality samples, preferably fresh. That's going to help you get a good protein assay and a better Western blot downstream. Now, as we already discussed, remember that the buffer composition can be a big influence on the BCA assay. So make sure that your samples are in a buffer that does not contain any copper chelators or reducing agents. If there is any of that, you can remove them, but make sure you do that before you start your assay. Again, refer to the data sheet of your kit for more detailed information on how to do that. Now, in addition to the buffer composition, your protein sample or the types of proteins present in your sample can also affect your BCA assay. So make sure you look at them before you choose which protein you're going to use to run your standard curve. Having a good standard curve is one of the key criteria for a good BCA assay. When you're running your standard curve, you want to make sure that you have at least 6 points of a serial dilution and always in 3 technical replicates. Remember that this is not an endpoint assay, meaning that reaction never truly stops. So you want to make sure that you spread your samples across the plate so that you could get a good feel of how they differ through time. In addition to that, we're always going to want to have at least 2 dilutions of our samples to make sure we fall within the linear range. Being in the linear range means I have a direct correlation between the values I get on my assay and the actual amount of protein that I have on the sample. Last but not least, when we get down to the point of analyzing our data, we want to make sure we don't extrapolate the data out of the curve. We're going to talk more about that later on. Before you start any assay, you always want to make sure that you have all reagents and instrumentation available to you. So what we're going to need today for this BCA assay is to first have the kit that we're going to be using, which is going to include our reagents A and B. Then we need to have whatever protein we choose to use for our standard curve. We need to have our unknowns or test samples as well as our blanks. We're going to need a 96 well plate and our plate reader, and after that, only the basic lab instrumentation such as pipettes, tips, tubes, and tube racks.